Hi, Walter.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, Mario. The recording has to be on. You can switch it off for a minute.
Huh?
The recording, it's recording. Ernie, how are you?
Good.
Good evening.
You had a graduation? What did you have?
I had a birth. One of my daughters. It was Ariella's birthday, 30th birthday party.
Oh, happy
Oh,
birthday.
Wow, 30, isn't he?
Ariella, yeah, the little Ariella. Tomorrow we're going to learn at 4:30. The same
Okay,
time.
I won't be here, so you host.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't be there either. So okay.
I'll be there.
Okay. I'm going to try to do 2 blot now because we're not learning
Let me
Sunday. So
make sure you stop after the first one and you stop the recording. Not pause, but stop it.
Monday night we'll learn like at 9:15.
I won't be here back.
Okay.
But I'll develop the videos after, but make sure you split when you finish the first plot, stop the recording completely. Please.
Okay, we're in the Mishnah, Pei Vav Amid Beis. Bas Yisrael shenissus lekohen toichel betruma. Right, a Bas Yisrael who marries a kohen gets to eat truma. Mace, if the kohen dies, the lahimena ben, and she has a son, a kohen, so the son allows her to continue to eat truma, toichel betruma. Now, another case, or let's say the same woman, Nissus LeLevi, Toicha b'maiser. So she now eats meiser, but not truma, because she doesn't eat truma anymore, because she's now considered a czar as it relates to the truma. Mace, v'lahimenu ben, the Levi dies, but there's a son that she had, Toicha b'maiser, she continues to eat meiser because of the son. So even though you have a son, but if you marry Yisrael or a Levi, you stop eating truma. No. We're talking about the Bas Yisrael who had a son who was a kohen. If she now gets married to a Yisrael or a Levi, she stops eating truma. She can eat meiser, but not truma. Now, Nissus Yisrael, once she marries Yisrael, loy toicha loy betruma v'lo b'meiser. Even with whether she has a son who's a kohen or a Levi, if she's married to Yisrael, she stops eating. Meis v'lo menu ben. If the Yisrael dies and she had a son from the Yisrael, loy soicha loy betruma v'lo b'meiser. She also continues not to eat truma meiser because of the son from Yisrael. Meis b'nami Yisrael. If her son, who was the Yisrael, died, she can go back to Toichel b'maiser. And Meis b'nami Levi, if the son from the Levi dies, Toichel b'truma, she go back to eating truma because she has a son who's a kohen. Meis b'nami kohen, if her son that was a kohen died, lo Toichel lo b'truma lo b'maiser. Okay, so that's that cycle. Bas kohen shenissus liYisrael. Normally, a bas kohen in her father's house is eating truma. Now she marries a pasha to Yisrael. Lo toichel betruma. Mace, v'lo menu ben. Her husband dies, but there's a son. The son also prevents her from eating truma. Lo toichal betruma. If there was no son, she could go back to her father's house and eat truma. Okay, this is Levi. She goes there and marries a Levi. Toichal b'maiser, can eat maiser. Meis v'lo menu ben. If the husband Levi dies, but there's a Levi son, the son feeds her maiser, toichal b'maiser. Nisus l'koyin, toichal b'truma. Meis v'lo menu ben. If there was a koyin son, toichal b'truma. Meis b'nami koyin lo toichal b'truma. If the son dies, she does not continue to eat truma. Meis b'nami Levi lo toichal b'maiser. Meis b'nami Yisrael. Now, if she has no children remaining, not the Kohen child, not the Levi child, not the Israel child, and she was a bas Kohen, even though she was married to all these people, she goes back to her father's house and eats truma. So that's the process. So the Gemara is medayik meis b'nami Levi toichal b'truma. Now, the Hadrach, L'mishum b'nami nalon, the fact that she continues to eat meiser because she had a son from a Levi, where do we learn that? Amrav Bas, Uvas Kohen, or also the case that she can continue to eat truma if she has a son. Ubas Kohen Kisiyel Managrusha, V'shava El Beisavia. She doesn't have a child. So bas uvas. Keman krabekiva the dor shvavi. Versus afilu temer rabbanon. Kula ubas kor yiseru. It's all an extra pasuk to tell me that she can be fed truma if she has a son from a kohen. Ton rabbanon. Kishi chozeres l'truma ve'ne chozeres l'chazav v'shok. If she has no children, she goes back to her father's house. She eats truma, but not chazav v'shok that's given from a shlomim. He betrumasa kodoshim lo yisoichel. Bamura min hakodoshim lo yisoichel. That which are raised and given to a kohen from korbanos, like a shlomim, chazav v'shoik, she doesn't eat. Rav Nachman Ravua milechem. She eats from her father's bread. V'lo kol lechem. Prat lechazav v'shok, to exclude the chazav v'shok. Maski for Rav Bar Chama. Maybe when she goes back to her father's house, it excludes the father's ability from being made for Nadorim. That once she marries the first time, her father never has a reshus again to be made for her Nadorim. Like it's taught by Ton of Rebbe Shmuel. The Ton of Rebbe Shmuel, V'neder amanag rusha yakum alea, ma tamud loymar v'alo mutza michlalav u'mutza michlabah. Well, she left her father's house, but now her husband died. So she's out of the father's house, she's out of the husband's house. So which is it? We're talking about a case where the father gave her to the shluchim that the Baal sent to get her. Or the shlichim of the Av gave it to the shlichim of the Baal. And then the Baal died. This armelon is garsha baderech. Hey chani koriba. What do we see? Beis avia shel zu, or beis baila shel zu. The rule is, for a minute, that she left the reshus of her father and got married to somebody, or even was given to the shlich habal, he cannot be made for any more Nadorim.
That even if he could be made for even if she turns a bogress, right? That's what we talk about in Nara, right? The father, once she leaves her father, even if she lives in her father's house and she turns 13.
Once you're a bogress, 12 and a half.
Uh-huh. So we're talking about a Nara then, right? We're talking about a Nara.
Yes.
Okay.
Rav Safra Omer milechem avia toichel. Lechem v'loy basar. She eats grain, but not meat. That's the excluding the chazav v'shok. Rav Papa Omer milechem avia toichel lechem hakonu la'avia. Truma is an asset that belongs to the kohen. Prat lechazav v'shok to meshulchan gavor kazachu. When the Kohen is given the chazav v'shok from a shlamim, it's as if Hashem is inviting the Kohen to eat at his table, but it doesn't become his asset like truma. Rav Omer v'es chazat nufa v'shteka truma tochlu atav v'nechov nesecha itach bizman sheitcha, when they're with you, once they leave you by getting married, they don't eat that anymore. Amar Rabba Tanya, kishi chozres lebeis avia, chozres letruma ve'ena chozres lechaz v'shok. It's a paraisa. When she goes back to her father's house without children, she eats truma, but not the chaz v'shok. Now, bishvil b'na, now, if she has a son, a kohen, then she can eat the chaz v'shok. So having a son allows truma as well as the chaz v'shok. Hi, Harold. We're on
Right.
Zayin Aleph near the bottom. Also, Rav Mordechai L'Shmaitza Kamen Rav Ashi. Omer me'echa kom Yisrapia. Where do you see this? Mi uvas. Mi adifa lo mina. Now, why should the son be better than her itself? When, as a bas kohen, she's not choizer to eat the chaz v'shok. Asum ksivi miyuti, achaloi ksivi miyuti, because by bas kohen who goes back to the father's house, so there's various miyutim. So we learn that she's excluded from chaz v'shok. But by the son, we don't see the same miyutim. V'shava el beis avia, prat l'shomeres yovim. If a woman is a lady in waiting for one of the brothers to do yibum, she does not eat truma. Let's say she's a bas kohen and her husband died, and she's waiting to be miyabim. She can't eat truma yet. And kinurea pras lemu beres. And if she's pregnant, she can't eat. It's a kavachomer. We don't need psukim. If a person was married and she had a son, and then her husband died, and she married somebody else, and the other husband dies without children, she still needs yibum just because she had a child from her husband. That's not considered to pater from the yibum. Even so, also uber ki yalud, regarding yibum, a woman being pregnant, she's not chayiv b'yibum. So makom shasav laban arishon kiv laban hashem lepoisam truma. But where a bas kohen married Yisrael and he had a child, but the child dies, and then let's say she married another Yisrael, and she now has no children, even though she married again. Now, if the child didn't die and she still has a child, she would not be able to go back to her father's house and eat. So then, Eino din shenasa uber ki yalud. So from Kal V'chomer, we would say that pregnancy, we don't need a pasuk. Because of love. Mali asa uber ki yalud linyan yibum. She was made like she had a child regarding yibum shari also mesim kachai. Because if she'd had a child, there would be, from the first husband, there would be no yibum. Nasa uber ki yalud linyan truma shlasa mesim kachai. Here, for example, if a bas kohen has a child, but the child dies, it's not like by Yibum, the presence of a child, even though the child eventually dies, doesn't change the fact that she didn't need Yibum. But now, if the child dies, she can go back to her father's house and eat. You need both. She doesn't have children. Well, there, she was one body. Now she's got two bodies, her and her child. But maybe she's still only one body. Maybe maybe she does go back and eat. So we need to be told that she doesn't eat. Because she was skinny, now she's fat. Now her body's the same. Maybe aim low. Maybe she wouldn't go back to eat. So she eats in both cases. Siman Amar Leilo Nasim Ma'aseh B'Misa Nasim Le Nasim B'Vlad Yibum U'Truma Siman Amar Le Rav Yehuda Midiskar LeRava Lo Nasim Meisim Kechayim Le'inyan Yibum. If a woman's husband dies and they had children, there's no Yibum if there's brothers because they had child. Now let's say the child dies. We don't go back and make one of the brothers do chlitzah to her. We look at what the status was when the husband died. If there was a child, that's what triggers the did. Anytime that she has a child that's not a kohen, whether it's the first husband, the second husband, apostles from eating truma. Lo asa mesim kachayim. But if a child dies, she can go back to her father's house and eat. But in a case of Yibum, where the first child does not necessarily pater from the second brother, so we would know it from a kavachomer. We're not going to have a situation.
If a man and his child, if a man dies at the same time as his son, we don't know which one died first. What do we say? Would there be Yevim or not?
So we had those cases.
I can't remember.
Where the house collapses.
Right, so we don't know. So what do we say?
Misafik, we would not allow you.
Okay, okay.
The Nasa Mesim Kachayim in Trumri Kavachoymer. Umab Malcolm Shlasov Laban Arisha Kavavan Hashem Lepotim and Yibum. Also Mesim Kachayim, Malcolm Shlasov Laban Arisha Kavavan Hashem Lepotim and Trumri in addition to Mesim Kachayim. But Lama Vizera Ain Law. She has no children. She goes back to her father's house and eats. The Gemara also says, "Nasef Vlad ben Arishon, ki Vlad ben Hasheni leini Yibum mikavachon." Uma b'mokum shlasa mesim kechayim, where a dead child is not made like a live child, leinian truma, because as long as there's no child, she can go back to her father's house. Also, Vlad ben Arishon ki Vlad ben Hasheni. The same whether it's the first husband or second. Malcolm Shasa Mesim Kachayim, Linyan Yibum. By Yibum, as long as the child was alive at the time that the guy died, there's no Yibum. So Einadin Shanasav Laban Rishon Kalaban Hasheni. Talmud Lamer Uvein Ein Lo. Well, Ein Lo. It all depends. What is the status when he dies? If he has no children, then there's Yibum. Below Nasav Laban Rishon Kalaban Hasheni Litrumi Kavachoymer. Ma b'makom shasa mesim k'chayim lepotim Rabbi Yibum. Lo asav laban arisha k'laban hasheni. Makom shlasa mesim k'chayim linin trum ein adin shlo nasav laban arisha k'laban hasheni. Amadona ein lo v'hayesh lo. If she has children, and then she's a bas kohen, she would not be able to eat from them. Hadulach yesh mutaros, hadulach yesh mutaros, hadulach yesh mutaros. New parak asiri. Haisha shahalach bailam dina sayam. A woman's husband goes to China. Bov anulach meis bala. Adim come. We'll see what type of adim. And say that her husband died. Uvenissus. And she gets married. V'achakach ba baila. And then her husband comes back home. Teitze mizeh mizeh. So we don't allow her to go back to her first husband. She never got a divorce from him. The second husband is no real marriage. You can't be Makadish and Neshes Ish. Still, the Mishnah says, Teitze mizeh mizeh. Utzricha get mizeh mizeh. We require a get. For example, if she wants to marry somebody else. The question is, why does she need to get from the second?
Yeah, the second one, yeah.
There's no kiddushin. Now, all of these are knasim because the chachamim rely on the woman. Before she gets married, she's going to check very carefully with her own private investigators that her husband is dead, because they make it so difficult if he's not dead. So they allow Eid Echad because they don't want her to be an aguna, but they know that she's going to check anyways, and therefore they make these knasim that it's teitze mizeh mizeh, tzricha get mizeh mizeh, ein lo ksuba v'lo peros v'lo mazonis v'lo blos. She doesn't collect the ksuba. She doesn't get money, peros. She doesn't get sustenance. She doesn't get clothing from either one. V'imlot lo mizeh mizeh tak. So she has to return if she took. Ve'avlad mamzer mizeh mizeh. Now, the vlad being a mamzer from the second guy, well, that's understandable. She was an Neshes Ish. It's a full mamzer. Now, if the first husband takes her back and has children with her, the Rabbanon make the child a mamzer.
How do you make it? How do you make the Rabban and
Mamzer mid Rabbanon. Mamzer mid Rabbanon.
it's like a doraita din that you're calling somebody a mamzer. It's not call it something else.
Rashi says, "Havi mamzer midivreim." Look at Rashi. V'hoilid mamzer is in Yalda. Avlad mamzer mizeh mizeh. In Yalda misheni mamzer gadol. She was a Neshes Ish. V'imshuv echzira rishon v'yalda lo. This Mishnah says he's not allowed to marry her. She has the first husband. Like he has to divorce her and he can't take her back. If he takes her back, they declare Havi mamzer midivreim.
Does that the same thing apply? If a man takes back his wife after he divorced her and she married a second guy?
Oh, it's not mamzer. No, that's not a mamzer. That's if someone's mamzer grushoso,
Mazur Rishasa.
not a mamzer.
Okay. Because there he actually gave her, because he gave her divorce, the first one, yeah.
No, he gave her a divorce.
Yeah,
Then she marries somebody else.
they took her back.
That
Mazur
guy divorces her, and he takes her back. He's not allowed to take her back if there's been an intervening marriage.
So
But
what's
if
it
it's
called?
not a mamzer.
So what's it called?
Mamzer grushoso.
Okay, that's the child, yeah, okay.
No, that's the case is mamzer grushoso.
I know, what was the child called for the first one takes it back?
Not a mamzer. He's a regular child.
Okay,
Below Zev Zem et Tamilov, they're Kohanim, they can't go to her funeral. Below Zev Zem Kohen Lo b'mitzuyasa, neither can acquire anything she finds, which normally husbands do. Below b'maisiyad, if she goes out and earns a living, normally the husband is entitled to that. These husbands are not. Lo ba'force the door, these husbands cannot be made for her nador. Hai Sabas Yisrael Nifslam and Akuna. Of course, the bias of the second guy was a bias nus, right? So she's a zona. And ubaslevi min meiser. If she's a baslevi, she also becomes possible to eat meiser. And if she's a baskoin, she becomes possible min truma. V'en yorshin shalzev yorshin shalzev yorshin es ksubasa. The heirs of both husbands do not get her ksuba. V'en mesu, if these two husbands die, if he died without children, we don't allow yibum. Rabbi Yossi Omer ksubos al nichse baila rishon. that there is a ksuba on the assets of the first husband. Rabbi Lezer Amar Arishon Zakai b'mitziyah. So the first husband acquires what she finds. Uvamaisi yadeh, what she earns. Uvahaforos l'dareha, and to be made for her nedar. Rabbi Shimon Omer biyasa chelotzo ma'achav shel rishon. If one of the brothers of the first husband does bia or chlitza, poteres tzarasa, it's a full-fledged ibul, and therefore, if there was a co-wife, the co-wife goes free. Ve'ein avlad mimenu mamzer. He disagrees with the Tanakama and says that if the first husband takes her back, the vlad is not a mamzer. Now, in this is shelo b'shus. The above, Rashi explains, the above cases was one aide came and Bezdin gave her permission to marry. But now the Mishnah is saying, but if two aidim came and she didn't go to Bezdin, she relied on the two aidim. So she got married without Rishus Bezdin. Then Muteras Lasrlo. Then she can go back to her original husband. Because there's never been a divorce. It's her husband. This is Api Bezdin. And this is in contradistinction to if Bezdin married her based on, for example, the testimony of one aide, which we'll see will allow. Tate say, then we don't allow a marriage with the first guy, Turam and not Korban. Now, Bezdin was the one that told her to get married to the second guy. So technically, she was an Eishes Ish. Maybe she should bring a Korban Chatas. But since that woman did it through a Hoiraz Bezdin, she's putter from a Korban. Loy Nisis Alpi Bezdin. On the other hand, if she got married based on the two Eidim, then Tate say, we still force a divorce. But the Chayev is Bekorban. She's a Shoygeg. So Yafa Korch Bezdin Sheportim not Korban. So Bezdin is stronger because it pattered her from Korban. Haru Bezdin li Naseh. Bezdin paskin that she should get married to a new guy. V'holcha v'kilkala. And she went ahead, and then the guy came back. Chayev is Bekorban. Shalohi tiru el li Naseh. Oh, she was mezaneh. Was a mistake. She has to bring a korban because they only permitted her to get married. The Gemara will explain what the last part of the Mishnah is adding. That in the Seifa where she gets married without Rishus Bezdin, she can go back to her husband. What does that mean? Shelo b'shus Bezdin ela be'edim. We're talking about two edim. Mechlal dereisha b'shus Bezdin ube'ed echad. When only one aid came. Alma, from there, we want to have a proof, eid echad nema. We can rely on one aid. Utna nami. Chuchzu kulios masina eid mi p'ei. Bezdin allowed even hearsay testimony. One aide giving testimony that he heard from somebody else. Isha me pi isha. Isha me pi evid and me pi shivcha. Suzy, Alma, eid echad mehemen. We see clearly one aide is permitted to avoid aguna. Utzna nami, eid echad oimer achalta chelet. One aide shows up and says to a guy, you ate chelet, which would require him to bring a korban chatas. He argues with the one aide. Potur. But if he didn't protest, the aide is believed, and he has to bring a korban. Alma, eid echad mehem in midoraisa. Now, Minolan, where do we know this from? The Tanya. Oh, hoda elav chatas. Persons find out about his sin. Below shayudu acherim. He has to find out by himself, not that other people tell him. He doesn't bring a korban al pi edus of other people, even if they give testimony that he sinned. Maybe he'd be potter even if he doesn't protest. Talmud Lamer, oh hoda ela mikol makom. So what's the case? Two witnesses came. And he doesn't protest. So I don't need a pasuk to tell me that that's going to work. Elalav chad. It's about 1-8. It's only that he's believed when he doesn't protest. Shmami no echad nem. From here we see echad is believed. Why do we say it's because he's believed? Maybe the fact that he was silent and didn't protest is like confession. And Teda, I'll show you that that svar is a good svar, the Tani Sefer. Two people say you ate chem. So the Tanakama says, even against Adim, if you deny your potter. Rav Meir says, what are you talking about? Machayev. You have 2 Adim against you. I'm Rav Meir Kavachomer. Let's say 2 Adim come and say Reuven killed Shimon. And Reuven says no. We take Reuven in to execute him. Person's protesting doesn't do anything in front of David. It says Rav Meir, if 2 Adim can bring you to Misa, lo yevu the korban akal. How can, just because he protests, why does he get off exempt potter from korban? On Rula, there's a difference. Because my Mirtzalomer Mezid Hayisi, he doesn't have to deny that he did it. But a Mezid doesn't bring a korban. So since he has a taina, or potential taina, he could say he's a Mezid, he's potter from korban. Okay. We'll stop here. This is a very, very important parak. About Erechad and Aguna and all of that.
Okay.
Tomorrow 4:30.
All right.